Hello, we're here with D.Povey, and today's question is about your PhD interview at Cambridge. Did you have an interview to get into PhD program at Cambridge?
So I had an interview when I went to get in at the undergraduate level. An interview at that time, at least, was quite important for undergraduate admissions to Cambridge. I don't know whether that's still the case. It's possible that they're trying to get rid of that because they feel it somehow disadvantages certain groups. But at that time, for undergraduate, the interview was important. And I remember the questions they asked. I was applying for physics, so I think they asked me some question about planets, like if there's a planet rotating around the sun, and then something falls to the sun from twice the distance away from the sun, like if it's going to fall through a hole through the planet, at what angle does the hole have to be? Or something like that. Anyway, I don't think I completely answered it, but I think I answered enough of it that they felt that I felt it was a good bit. So the interview for PhD programs tends to be, I think, a little bit different. The thing is, I entered the PhD after I had already done a master's. So and it's often like that. And things, they already knew me because it was the same people who ran that master's program. So they were interviewing a known quantity. So when you do that, you don't really even need to do an interview, or you don't have to really ask questions. But actually, now that I think of it, I do remember that they asked me some questions about the master's program. They were asking me, like, if they were to, throw something on the desk, like if I were to draw the distribution of how that would fall, like what functional form I thought it might have. My guess was the distribution that I was familiar with was some kind of exponential looking thing that I learned in chemistry. And I said, maybe that. I guess they were satisfied with that. I think it was two people at that time. So I've also interviewed people for PhDs. And I guess the interview still does matter because when you interview someone for a PhD, you're going to work with them personally, right? So you don't want to get in someone who's useless.
Did they ask you to solve some CS problems during the interview?
Well, not really CS problems. Maybe these days they might for some interviews. In that case, my master's was actually done in the engineering department, and they could have asked me some programming questions, but for whatever reason they didn't. Maybe also they just didn't have that mindset. These days, sometimes I will ask people just some really easy questions about certain programming languages that they say they are familiar with, because I want to judge their level of competence. Like, let's suppose if they say they know Python, I might ask, explain to me how iterators work in Python, or something that will judge, do they just know basic level, or like intermediate level, or wizard level? Because there's certain things that they'll know if they're really, really experienced at Python. Do they ask? And of course, this doesn't really let you know how talented they are, like inherently. It just lets you know what's their level of experience, really.
Did they ask any data structure questions like in job interviews?
Well, that must have been 20 or 30 years ago now. And back then, things were a little bit different. I don't think computer science had quite solidified into quite the same thing it is today. They didn't, but sometimes people do.
Did you have any interviews to get into undergraduate program at Cambridge?
Yeah, like I say, at that time, the in-person interview was quite important. at Cambridge and Oxford. I don't know how true that still is because a lot of things have been changing recently. I had a friend at Cambridge who he said that one time either him or his little brother, I think it might have been his brother, interviewed at Oxford, and they asked him something, I think it was about benzene, and he didn't know the answer, and he said that wasn't on the syllabus, and they immediately rejected him because they didn't like his attitude.
Oh,
Yeah. Which I can understand, but the thing is, maybe we can't also blame him for his attitude. Maybe it somehow comes from the school or whatever. I don't know. How old was I when I started college? I was younger than normal. I think I was like 16 or something. Yeah.
okay.
Looking back, I don't know if I would have chosen to start at 16. But that was the way it was.
Okay. Can you tell us about Cambridge life?
Well, there's a lot of aspects about Cambridge that look a little bit like Hogwarts, because that's the kind of thing that the movies and books are based on. Like you eat in hall, and it's at these long benches by candlelight, and you have to wear these special robes while you're eating at hall.
Are you
And
joking?
no, I'm not joking. At least that was when I was there. Like, it was this
They
long
make you
robe you have
wear
to buy.
robes?
It's specific to the college and to your rank in the college. It looks a bit like a wizard's robe. You're supposed to wear it like they used to wear it around town, but more recently people don't often do that. But you definitely have to wear it when you're eating at hall. So there's two eating times at hall. One is like at 6, and I think that's the early one where it's just like self-service, and you can eat as you can. But then the second one, this is different by college though. And then in the second one, you definitely have to wear the robe, and everyone sits down and they serve it at the table, and it's all by candlelight. And then at the top of the room, on a slightly raised part of the room, that's where the masters sit. Well, so not the masters, that's where the professors and the master of the college sit. And sometimes they have different courses. I think they have different things served than the undergraduates. I think they have like a cheese course and stuff like that. Actually, I think the food at Peterhouse, which was my college, was a little bit infamous. Once I invited some people there, and they served this mixed grill, which was like there was sausages and some kind of venison, or I forget what it was, but those people always laughed at that. They thought it wasn't a very good selection. It could be it was just whatever meat they had left over, and they wanted to get rid of it. I don't know.
Okay. How many hours did you study when you were in Cambridge?
I don't know. I think I spent a lot of time studying, but often it wasn't the things that I was supposed to be studying. I was very undisciplined, and the thing is, at school I had never really had to study because I just remembered whatever they told me in the lessons, and kind of studying for me was like unnecessary. So actually that didn't prepare me that well for university, because at university there's a lot more material, and you actually kind of have to study, and you have to study the things that you're told to study, because what I didn't realize, I guess what school didn't prepare me for, was how vast the amount of information there is, and that to learn something you've got to be very strategic about what you learn. So I studied a lot, but I didn't study the right things. And actually, for the first couple of years, I got quite bad grades at university. Yeah.
Okay, what classes did you take?
Well, I started off at Cambridge. They have this thing called the Natural Sciences Tripos. I applied to do that. I was going to do physics, and I think I would have been well suited to do physics. But for some stupid idealistic reason, at the last minute, I decided to switch to biology, which you don't have to reapply if you want to switch from physics to biology, because it's just choices of what classes to take. It's the same tripos. So I took those classes, but I really wasn't that suited to biology, because biology is all about memorizing facts that often they're not very interesting, or they don't really have any rhyme or reason to them. And I didn't do very well at that. I would have done much better at physics. In the end, I almost flunked out, but in the end, they let me redo my final year and switch to some computing related stuff. They had a kind of something they called Part 3 General, which you could do something a bit like a master's, but as part of your undergraduate. And I did computer stuff then, and I was much better suited to that than to biology.
Okay, how did you pay your tuition?
Well, this was some time ago, 20 or 30 years ago. At that time, the tuition rates were extremely low. I guess it was subsidized by the government. And of course, at that time, many fewer people went to college, so that it was easier for the government to subsidize it. I think it was a much better system, actually, because everyone doesn't need to go to college. It just becomes some other stupid requirement that everyone has to do. Anyway, so tuition was very low, and they gave you these student loans that would cover both tuition and some basic living expenses. So I think the student loans paid the tuition directly. In the end, I was able to pay off the student loans like within half a year or something after graduating, because the amount was really small. It was just a couple £1,000 a year or something like that. I guess back then living expenses were much lower.
Okay, where did you live while studying at Cambridge?
Well, as an undergraduate, you live in college. Definitely in the first year, it's like kind of physically in the college grounds. Now in Cambridge, the university and college are not the same thing, because the university is like the whole town, and the colleges are these individual things that there's like 20 or 30 of them, and it's kind of like a residence place. Plus, they supervise some of your studies. It's a special system. But so initially, I lived on the college. After your first year, the place where you live is determined by how good your grades are, so that you get the choicest rooms if you have good grades. I didn't have very good grades, so I ended up quite far from the actual college. The college owned or rented certain properties, halfway across Cambridge, that you had to walk or cycle to.
Okay, were you a member of any clubs?
Let me think. The only thing that I was really involved in, I was religious at that time. I was raised as a Baha'i. I guess I was involved in the Baha'i club or society. I don't recall that I was involved in anything else of note. At one point, I used to play frisbee. There was this physics guy called David Mackay who organized this ultimate frisbee club. I sometimes went there.
Okay, so you did your whole degree at Cambridge?
Uh, Yeah, I did my undergraduate, then I did a master's and PhD there, yeah.
Okay. So you started in biology and ended up in computer recognition
Yeah, computer speech recognition, yeah.
because you flunked out and they let you switch.
Well, kind of. I wasn't doing very well. I would have, because I was supposed to do this research project, and that was in my third year, the first copy of my third year, and I don't know, it kind of didn't materialize. I stopped going. Maybe I wasn't really feeling very well, but in any case, I redid that as computer science, and in that case, I did quite well.